All right, let's do this. It's another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Recap Show. Pete Sweeney here with podcast producer at Arrowhead Pride, Stephen Serda, as the Kansas City Chiefs win 31-13 over the Washington football team. And Steve, I think we got to start here. In the second quarter, the Kansas City Chiefs were looking really like they have been looking all year when it came to a lot of the problems that they have with the interceptions and the fumble. And you have the defense that all of a sudden gives up a 3rd and 16. You have Tyrann Mathieu going ballistic on the sidelines. You had a complete coverage bust, even with Juan Thornhill in the lineup, where there were 2 pass catchers for Washington behind the last defender of the Chiefs secondary, and the ball goes into Ricky Seals-Jones' hands, the former Chief, out of nowhere. It's 13-10 Washington going into the locker room, and then right before the break, Patrick Mahomes, without a doubt, Steve, threw what was the worst pass of his career, the worst decision maybe of his career. And then you go in and you have 15 minutes to think about it, and you're like, what happened to this team? How did this happen to this team where they've become one of the worst teams in the National Football League? Then you come out, you have the first possession of the second half. It's a 3 and out. You're like, are they really going to lose to Washington? Is that what's going to happen right now? The defense had a nice day. They stayed with it. They got the Chiefs the ball back. Then all of a sudden, you had Darrell Williams get going. This offensive line that inserted Mike Remmers in, who knows how much that helped, but the run game was better. Darrell Williams looked great. Darrell Williams gets going. All of a sudden, Patrick Mahomes begins to find Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and it finally starts looking like the offense and the confidence that we just had not seen for weeks and weeks and weeks. And you go in the same game, in the course of the same 60 minutes, as I'm writing on arrowheadpride.com and my rapid reaction to this, you go from rock bottom, almost losing to the Washington football team, to a blowout where it finally does seem like the Chiefs may be on the right course. You hope that it's only up from here after really hitting the lowest of the lows at halftime.
I think we both simultaneously tweeted it out after that Patrick Mahomes interception that this is rock bottom. This is rock bottom for this Chiefs team, because it was like that kind of interception. Like, that's not a Patrick Mahomes interception. That's something you expect from Taylor Heineke. Like, sorry, Taylor, but that's something you would expect from a player like that, not from Patrick Mahomes. But it was just 2 completely different games in the first half and in the second half, where in the second half, they finally settled down. And when this offense does not turn the football over, they're pretty impossible to stop. Like, the only thing that's held the offense back so far this year is the turnovers, the inexplicable mistakes, like Tyreek Hill not hanging on to the football and deflecting it into a defender's hands. And then it all spirals out of control from there. And so the Chiefs are a much better team than Washington. So this final score is indicative of that. And the second half was indicative of that, because this is how this game should have played. The Chiefs put up over 500 yards of offense, which isn't easy to do. And they did most of that in the second half of this football game. So it's a step in the right direction, but there's still problems. You should dominate the Washington football team. If you're as good as we think you are, you should absolutely dominate this football game. And it was nice to finally see them do that in the second half.
Yeah, you would like an effort for 4 quarters. I think it's a good reminder in the first half, right? You finally have gotten through this wave of where you had to play these really challenging AFC teams and these formidable offenses. And you get the Washington football team, and it is a team that is inferior to you. I know that they were both 2-3 coming into the game, but you probably should have dominated for the 4 quarters. The Chiefs did not. And it was a reminder, I think, in the first 2 quarters that if you don't play your best ball, you can lose to anyone on any given week, not just the AFC contenders, but any team. And you saw Washington kind of take advantage of that. It's amazing that they had a lead after the second quarter, and that's why it just felt so low. And it was that question. It was staring the Chiefs in the face. Is this going to be your season? Are you a team? Because if the Chiefs had lost to the Washington football team, you would have said, I don't know if this team is
It's a
making the
wrap.
damn playoffs,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like,
a
are they going to
wrap.
make the playoffs? Are there serious questions that need to be asked about what they're doing here? And I think it just was so good. Not only, like I said, it was the vintage offense and the vintage confidence, but you finally got back to the superstar that is Mahomes, right? Like one of the wildest throws maybe he's ever thrown. It got called back due to a penalty where he goes to the numbers and throws across his body accurately to the other hash. And you're like, my God, he's back, right? And so now if Mahomes is back, then I think you get to a point where you're starting to feel good about the Chiefs' chances every time that they have the football. And I think what's pertinent, I know that Mahomes had another pick, but Sam McDowell of the Kansas City Star, friend of the show, tweeted this during the game when he had 7 interceptions. 2 were through Tyreek Hill's arms. 1 was off Marcus Kemp's shoulder pads. 1 by a defensive lineman on a quick pass that was last game. And then 3 desperate third down heaves to avoid pressures and punts. So the number's high. I know that Mahomes hasn't hit these numbers like this before in a really long time. I believe since his initial year, he didn't have more than 6 or 7 interceptions in 2019 and 2020. But, the numbers are the numbers. You got to dig deeper a little bit. And Mahomes has really been pressing. That we know. And it finally looked like it just felt like he could relax. And man, when Mahomes is relaxed and feeling like he has a feel for when to bail from the pocket, when to stay, when he can do a little shovel pass to his boy Travis Kelce, when he could find Tyreek Hill in the open field, that's when the Chiefs offense is playing its best. And you could see the defense, who was already having a good game, they start to gain confidence from that, and the whole thing starts ticking.
There is something to the idea that they were just simply leaning on Patrick Mahomes way too much. Like, just, okay, we're going to play bad. We're going to make mistakes, but Pat, we need you to go bail us out. And in the first half of this football game, the Chiefs simply did not look like they were better than Washington, which is scary if you're a Chiefs fan. And then in the second half, it got a little bit more relaxed. Darrell started breaking off runs.
Right.
The Tyreek Hill was hanging on to the football when he made his return in the third quarter after exiting for a little bit because of that quad injury. They started feeding Travis Kelce. And once they got settled in, then yeah, I know that throw got called back because of a penalty, but that's when you get that kind of stuff from Mahomes, when it looks easy because he gets comfortable and he just starts vibing and reading the field and being able to do things that nobody else in football can. And so you have to do that more. And it's hard to say, like, oh, the turnovers aren't on him, because some of them are, but you simply can't have Tyreek Hill dropping balls like that. Like, Tyreek Hill, you're supposed to be one of the best wide receivers in football. You're supposed to be our reliable guy.
And to be fair, like, he talks about that. And if you're going to be a top 1 wide receiver, and I think that's possible for Tyreek Hill, the drops that he has had with the picks are not something the best wide receiver in the league can do. I mean, that's just obvious, right? So I think the drops have become an issue. Perhaps this is just a fluky thing where it's happened in back-to-back games where they went for interceptions, and he'll kind of get past this and move on to next week. And it really, like I said, it felt like the Chiefs got in sync later in the game. Man, Travis Kelce was beat up in this game. He was tossed around. He was limping at one point. His arm hurt. He checked out for a few plays, really shaken up, yet he still has 8 catches for 99 yards. Like, I don't know, because I think he gets criticized sometimes for the pass blocking and some of the run blocking stuff. Man, he is one of the toughest players in the NFL. So I think, like, Kelce deserves a shout out to me. Also to Joe Tooney for playing in this game with a broken hand. As he broke his hand, he misses 2 days of practice. He shows up on Friday with the club. And I thought the offensive line left some room to be desired in maybe the first half, but it seemed like they were really settling in. And I wonder, I'm interested in our tape guys to go back and really dig in to see how much maybe Mike Remmers had an impact on it. At one point in this game, it seemed like Trey Smith was hobbled too. So it was a beat you up type of football game, and the Chiefs were able to, I think, just stay with it. They didn't lose themselves in what could have really unraveled on them going into the second half, and they played well. We're getting some injuries now, as I see, Steve. It is official. Unfortunately, tight end Jody Fortson did tear his Achilles. So that is an injury to watch. We also know that there's an injury to Anthony Hitchens with his elbow. It doesn't seem like Hitchens is very serious, but we'll have to follow that one for further tests and probably get an update on Wednesday. So as you have the high of highs for Darrell Williams, who really made the most of his first opportunity, a low of lows point here for tight end Jody Fortson, who was finally getting his opportunity.
It's a major bummer for Jody, who was actually becoming a part of this offense. Like, the Chiefs are utilizing him on a weekly basis now, where he's got a couple touchdowns on the year. He had the big catch in the first half. Yeah, that really sucks for a fan favorite who had just been working his tail off to make the team and finally did, and was actually a contributor for this team. So that's a major bummer. Hopefully Hitchens isn't dealing with anything super serious, but I mean, the linebackers looked better today, right? At least, I mean, really the entire game. Like, the overall defensive performance was better with this team. I don't think that means all of the issues are solved. You mentioned the Ricky Seals-Jones touchdown, which was just a totally blown coverage where Juan Thornhill didn't look like he knew where he was supposed to go. Ben Neiman was way deeper in coverage than I think Ben Neiman should ever be in coverage, and it just blew up in their face. And they're going to keep doing that. I don't think that stuff's going to go away, but you have to feel better about it, right? Like, you didn't lose this game because of the defense, and the offense almost gave it away in the first half because of turnovers, but they got it figured out. And this was probably the most complete game that they've played all season, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, at one point I had tweeted out what the possessions were for Washington, and now that the game is over, I can go through them again. Punt, field goal, fumble, touchdown, missed field goal, punt, and then the interception to seal the game. And so, yeah, to me, you're not going to play much better than the Chiefs defense did today. Again, it was not necessarily what you would consider to be a formidable opponent, but you got to play who you can play at this point. Just because you lost to AFC, championship contending teams, you're not going to get another opportunity to play a team like that for a few weeks in the NFC in the Green Bay Packers. So you got to play who you can play. And Washington gave the Chiefs a run for its money. I'm seeing now, as Andy Reid called this a tale of two halves, and it truly was that, where the Chiefs just I wish I could have been a fly in that halftime locker room, because I wonder what was said. We do have Andy Reid starting up right now. Let's go to Andy Reid.
Good games for us over the years, so but it was nice to have him have that spot and go get it like he did. He had almost 100 total yards, and with the running and the reception. So good football player. Ran hard, big, hard. So.
Maybe on defense, the personnel changes we saw, but it also seemed like it blitz more, trying to get a little bit. Is that true? And did that go hand in hand with personnel, or is that something?
Well, yeah, he mixed it up. I thought he mixed it up pretty good, but trying to get pressure on the quarterback. So, I thought Spags had a nice game plan though, all the way around. They're a scrappy offense right there. So, that quarterback, when he's hot, man, he can get that thing going. So, I thought Spags mixed and matched pretty well with his blitz game.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned how the first half and the second half were so different. Was halftime different? I mean, did you sense something like that might be coming?
No, listen, I just think the guys put their mind to it and bared down, and kind of enough's enough. And there's a point where you have to do that. I thought they did a nice job.
Andy, the turnovers, the fact that it's a trend, is that sour? The feeling right now, it's hard to win this league, hard to win on the road, but the fact that it's
yeah, no, listen, as long as we're curing it, I'm good with it. I'm not sure I've been around quite this many, but we're there, and so it needs to change. But they were heading the right direction that second half, so I appreciate that.
Travis really gutted it out.
Yeah, no, Travis was hurting. His neck was sore from, the week before, stiff. But he worked through it and, did a nice job. He's a pretty savvy guy, man. He did some nice things. And it was good to get the other guys in. I'm sorry for Jody and what happened to him, because he's been doing so well. And but Noah came in and had some valuable reps for us.
Andy, you said last week that you would like to see, you wonder what it looked like when both sides of the ball played complementary football together. Just how much was it important for the defense to sort of set that tone in the second half?
Yeah.
Because it looked like Pat actually took a sack and you needed to take one.
Yeah, Nate. I mean, you saw everybody lift up. I mean, probably the best thing was on the interception by Turk. I mean, the whole team ran down there. That's what this is all about. It's an emotional game, and so you've got to play that way. And things are kind of dead that first half, and there's one way to do it. You got to reach down a little bit and go. And I thought the guys did that. Yeah.
Last two.
Anytime Matthew seemed like he was upset. Did you see what was going on there? Is that just his?
Oh no, he was upset. Yeah, because it wasn't going right. And that's what I'm saying though. The guys get tired of it, and those leaders, you get tired of it. I mean, it's got to change. And so you need a little bit of that fire, and then everybody needs to feel it, and then go. So I mean, that's what happened there.
And Coach, obviously, the defense has struggled, but again, they only gave up 13 points today. Frank Clark, a lot of aggression, a lot of getting pushed on the line.
Yeah, I thought the guys did a good job with the pressures. I thought they did a good job with the run game for the most part, shutting it down. That runner there is one that got hurt, is a heck of a player, and then 41 comes in and does a nice job for him. So, but I thought our guys bared down and did a good job against that offense.
Last one. Andy, you guys were -4 in turnovers against the Chargers, as you remember. Still were there at the end. You were -1, I believe, on the road. Still won by 18 today. What does that tell you about your team if you guys can get this turned around?
Yeah, we're going to get it turned around. So, and then, it'll be a pretty nice picture. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
So there you go. It's Chiefs head coach Andy Reid talking after the Chiefs comeback win. You have to say it's a comeback win, Steve, 31-13 over the Washington football team. And I think the thing that stuck out for me there in that listen was the turnover thing. It's clearly acknowledged. It's clearly not forgotten, but he kind of alluded to what we've been talking about, where it was a tale of two halves, where it did seem like the Chiefs had a second half to build on. It was still a problem in the first half. It seems like they can build on it in the second half. Talked about Travis Kelce gunning it out. That Tyrann Mathieu period where the Chiefs did give up that touchdown to what was Ricky Seals-Jones, and it had followed a 3rd and 16 conversion. He reportedly went ballistic on the sidelines, and the Chiefs defense, I think, really heard the message. And you love that fire out of Tyrann Mathieu, because even for an organization that he is off the field right now disappointed with, in the fact of very clearly of how the contract situation went, he still cares very much about giving it his all and making sure that this defense has some self-respect and certainly some swagger.
Yeah, that's what you want from the leader. And the defense, one of the biggest frustrations with me so far this season is that while they've been absolutely terrible, I keep saying they can't be as bad as 2018. Like, there's simply just too much talent. Even if you don't believe that Frank Clark's going to bounce back and turn things around, like Tyrann Mathieu, Juan Thornhill, those guys, Chris Jones, Willie Gay, hopefully getting back and being healthy and looking like the explosive linebacker that everybody wants him to be. I just think that there was more talent on this defense than there was on that 2018 defense. So, yeah, when they're playing bad, I want to see somebody act like they care about it. And so it's good to see Tyrann Mathieu get fired up, because that Ricky Seals-Jones touchdown was bad. And that's the second straight week. You've been bad at covering tight ends for years now, but that's a second straight week. You got burned for a long touchdown by a tight end. You can't even – we're not even talking about wide receivers right now. We're getting burned by tight ends. So it was nice to see Tyrann Mathieu get upset and see that – he's the one that's over there trying to fire them up, and then they actually responded to it. So that's what you want to see, progress.
I tend to agree with you on the personnel, meaning the defense on paper. When you compare them to 2018, I for sure believe that this defense is indeed more talented. They've been playing worse than that defense. They've been historically bad as far as the worst defense through 5 weeks and really the history of the NFL. And I think that was a true turning point, because, you realize when he went absolutely nuts, what was the score, Steve? It was 13-10. The Washington football team did not score after what was that complete tirade. And so, I think sometimes too much is made of players and their speeches and whatnot. Not this time. This seemed to really make an impact on the game quite directly.
Yeah, and players won't come out and straight up say this like in their post-game press conferences or something like that. But I have to imagine the attitude on that defense was this team has no business leading us right now. They have no business burning us. Like this isn't the Buffalo Bills. You can you can settle in and deal with that and how talented of a football team they are. Like you got to go into this game knowing this is our get right game. This is the game where we turn things around and we start playing better. And they did in the second half after looking like it was the same thing that we had seen through the first 5 weeks of the season in the first half. So hopefully this is a turning point for the defense because, again, if the offense just stops turning the football over, that defense doesn't have to be anything special. It just can't be the worst defense in football.
This is also a team and defense where if they can start playing well with this group, where you have Juan Thornhill and Rashad Fenton in the lineup, Thornhill in for Sorensen because Sorensen was benched to an extent, and then you had Rashad Fenton in because of an injured Charvarius Ward. To me, that is critical because what you're going to end up happening is you'll have these players coming back. So you'll get Ward back in the lineup. Like we know Ward is good. We know Chris Jones is good when they're healthy. So Andy Reid going into this game, he said that they were close. And so if this unit is playing well without these players, where you have, like I said, Fenton and Thornhill, I think breathing a little bit of life into this team. Willie Gay, as he gets better. I thought rookie Nick Bolton had a really nice day in the fact that he was sniffing out of what Washington likes to do in the screen game. And so like that was huge to me. And so you get a little bit healthier. You're starting to feel better about these players. We'll have to see about the elbow injury on Anthony Hitchens, but I think you have some good things to feel about this defense. And you can make a case right now, Steven, who thought we'd be saying this? Not only is Mike Dana the best player on the defensive line, enforcing that fumble today, Mike Dana, a fifth rounder, may be the best player on the defense at this stage. And what a pleasant surprise that is when you think about, okay, Frank Clark is starting to look a little bit better. I'll say a little bit, and you'll be getting a healthy Chris Jones back hopefully soon.
And Frank had a couple moments today.
Right.
Where,
yeah, you got to give it to him.
Yeah, you got to feel a little bit better about what
it wasn't the type of play that you need from the amount of salary cap you're devoting to him, but
sure.
It's progress, right? It seemed like he was actually making his presence known, which whether it be because of being off the field altogether or coming back slowly, just hasn't been the case for a long time.
Yeah, and the Mike Dana fumble was fantastic. It feels like he's been the one guy who has been a bright spot along that defensive line with Chris Jones being injured and not really being effective since the first week of the season. That was a man's forced fumble where he just said, "I'm taking the football from you," and just ripped it out. And then L'Jarius Sneed scooped it up. The Tershawn Wharton interception was just a fantastic play. Not a great throw, obviously, but a really tough play to just take that football off of the back of an offensive lineman was something you don't see from a lot of defensive linemen. And Tershawn Wharton was a guy that I think we had higher hopes for coming into the season because of the way he played last year as an undrafted player, working his way into the rotation and having an impact when he was in the football game. And then the way he looked in the preseason, everybody was really hyped for Tershawn Wharton. Like, this guy's going to have a significant role on this defense. And it hasn't really manifested. So it was nice to just see him have an impact play and have a good game. And hopefully that defensive line is figuring some things out.
Steve, that's the best defensive play we have seen in a long time in Kansas City. A long time. Like, I can't even recall. Like, it might be the best play of the year. And you have Patrick Mahomes doing these wild throws on this team with Turk Wharton. He has been getting more playing time where Jaron Reid has been rotating out a little bit more. And so now I think, that's the type of play that you could really springboard off of. I mean, that is something that he's going to have forever. It's just a freakish play, and it really sealed the game. And it makes up a little bit for the interception that Patrick Mahomes had last week, where he just basically threw the ball into a lineman. And so you kind of feel like you got one back there. Fenton, as I said, I think it's important to focus back on him for a second here. He's been really refreshing as far as he's starting to look like a legitimate NFL corner that can go up against these receivers who are at an elite level. He did a nice job with Stephon Diggs the previous week, and you had this play today against De'Ami Brown. Certainly not Stephon Diggs, right? But Brown is streaking down the field. I looked up his 40-yard time. He's a 4.45 40-yard time. And Fenton is it might have been pass interference on the play. I mean, I think maybe the Chiefs got away with one, but he was foot for foot running right with what was Brown, who is a really speedy young receiver. And so, man, you start to get a little healthy here. You do get Ward back in there. You're feeling better about Mike Hughes. L'Jarius Sneed had one of the better games of this early season where he was streaking down and making tackles. He actually recovered the Mike Dana fumble. I don't think you come out of this game and you're like, all right, the Chiefs are fixed. But like you can take things away and you could see where, now I think like have building blocks to go off of. And now let's see them put really, you can't even say a game because they really only played like well in the second half as a complete team. Let's see them put two halves together and then have that turn into what would be full games together. And then you get back into your winning ways in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we want the next two games after this one. Like, hopefully, the second half of this football game was the turning point, and now we see them with two complete game performances against the Tennessee Titans, against the New York Giants, because those are winnable games. Those are games that they should absolutely win and improve to 5-3, headed into another really tough stretch of their schedule. So hopefully that is the turning point. And I'm glad you brought up Rashad Fenton, because I feel like Rashad Fenton, since he came in for the Chiefs, has just not gotten enough credit for how good he's been. Like, he's a guy that is just, whenever he gets playing time, whenever he finds his way onto the field, he has done nothing but be solid for the Chiefs. And he gets overlooked. And L'Jarius Sneed is their best cornerback, and he's been their best cornerback, even though he's had some of his ups and downs this season. But Rashad Fenton is one of their better corners too, and he deserves some of the credit there because he's done nothing but be solid when he's been on the field this year.
Yeah, and what I think is suddenly where you felt like the secondary maybe needed more, and who knows? I mean, you're approaching the trade deadline here. You feel okay about it, and I think part of the reason for that too is because, again, the second half today was better, but also for the first time in a while, I mean, for weeks and weeks and weeks, it seemed like the Chiefs just could not sustain any pressure at all on the opposing quarterback. And they finally, I thought, broke through in a sense against Heineke and what he was doing. I'll count it up quickly here. The Chiefs ended up having 7 quarterback hits. I'm curious for the PFF numbers to come out and just see how many pressures they had in this game, because for the first time in a long time, it did seem like the opposing quarterback was finally uncomfortable, which does what? It helps the secondary. Let's go to Patrick Mahomes now. We have Patrick Mahomes in his press conference.
And we were able to find a way to get a win.
It seemed like in the second half, some of your throws were kind of low, like hey, my guy's going to get it or nobody's going to get it. Like the touchdown to Reid, like the third down play a little bit later to Travis Kelce's short pass. Was that intentional? I mean, were you trying to put the ball where only your guy could get it in the second half?
The touchdown one, I was trying to just get it to him as quickly as possible. The play was kind of designed for Kels, actually, and Tyreek just kind of split, so I put it on him as quickly as possible. The third down one, I got to throw a better ball. I mean, he broke out, and they were driving it fast, but if I put it on his body, it isn't as difficult of a catch. He made a great catch on it.
Can you take us through that play of the interception late in the first half? Just not something we've seen you do.
That's bad. That's the best way. First off, I dropped the snap trying to get out of there too fast to get it to Darryl. And then I picked it up, was going to try to run outside, and then saw Trav. And then the rest you can kind of see. It was bad, but, I mean, you got to bounce back in this league. It's going to look bad. It's probably like, oh, come on, man, or something like that. But you got to find a way to win games at the end of the day. Defense got to stop. We were able to go out there and score in the second half and bounce back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing was the guys kept believing in me. I think that was a big thing to me. I mean, Orlando, Travis, Tyreek, all those guys came right up to me and they're like, "You keep being you. Like we know you're competing. We know who you are. Don't let that one thing affect how you play." And you saw it in the second half. I kept doing stuff, kept throwing across my body and doing a lot of different type of stuff because I know those guys believe in me, and I'm gonna keep being that and keep fighting to the end.
You talked, obviously the tell that you have 3 first half interceptions, second half much more cleaner. What did you all say in the locker room? I mean, because it seemed like at times when you were maybe trailing 13-10, it seemed like you may have been trying to put pressure on yourself for the team to put pressure on themselves to try to get back into the ball game quickly. What did you all do at half? I mean, maybe with the hoop sticks.
I don't know if there was anything said. I mean, people talked obviously and said different things. I think the guys just really just dug down and played. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it takes in this league. Every single week's a battle. I mean, you're going to play. They have good football players. They have a great defensive line. They have a great defense. But you have to battle. You have to battle to win in this league every single week. And I thought guys did that in the second half. Is they just went out there together and we just played. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. You have to go out there and play, try to execute the plays to the best of your ability, and leave everything you have on that field. And whatever the results are at the end of the day, you have to be able to live with that.
I know the completion doesn't get in the game book because of penalties, but what is the best feeling when you scramble like that and do throw across your body and it is a success, even if it isn't in the stat sheet?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's fun to talk about after, but I mean, I actually saw the flag. I thought they were holding Kels, and so I rolled and I threw it across my body to Tyreek. It ended up being a flag on Kels. I haven't seen it, so a little bit more riskier than when I threw it, I guess. But I knew there was a chance if I got it to Tyreek because everybody was going to the right side of the field and it was man coverage, and he got the ball, and I mean. It was like N1 mixtape at that point. I mean, I haven't seen it all exactly, but I know at one point he had stopped, and I thought he was out of bounds, and then he kept running. So I knew that a lot of crazy stuff was happening out there.
Couple more guys.
I feel like you and Nicole are developing a little bit more chemistry down good balls or he's catching them. I feel like you guys are coming together as one.
Yeah, I think all the guys are battling. I mean, when you play a team like this, I mean, they were kind of doubling Tyreek and traveling those third down situations where you saw me running a little bit. And then you saw plays like to D-Rob at the end of the game and to McCole down the sideline. And if teams they're gonna do that, they're gonna try to take away our 2 best guys in certain situations. Other guys got to make plays, and you saw that today. I mean, you saw the one to McCole, obviously to D-Rob, and unfortunately, I mean, the one to Jody is kind of the similar situation. And so it's going to be like that all season long. Teams are going to keep playing us the same way, force us to be patient, and then make other guys make plays, and we have to trust in those guys to do that.
Last 3.
Go ahead. Were you able to see Jody after the game?
Yeah, I saw him. I mean, he's in good spirits. I mean, obviously, we don't know the extent of whatever it is, or at least I don't know. But hopefully it's not as bad as it looked out there, and we can have him back.
We go Sam Vahe. Sam Vahe now.
Patrick, I understand it's just week 6, but at 2 and 3, did you feel like that was a really important half to put together there in the second half?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the way we did it, even though it wasn't pretty in the first half, I mean, I feel like kind of hopefully will get us rolling. I mean, we had another bad first half, and it could have spiraled right there. I mean, it could have how this season's gone, the adversity we dealt with, it could have spiraled. But I thought the guys, it was a lot of mental toughness to go back and to battle and to go out there and believe in each other. And the defense, the way they played today, I mean, that offense has been putting up points. I mean, they have some playmakers over there, and for them to hold firm while we were struggling, I mean, that's what it takes in this league. It takes everybody. It's not the offense, not the defense. It's everybody together, coming together at the right time to be great, and that's what we want to be.
Patrick, you were talking about the reassurance you got from the guys after that one play and how it sort of helped you. How much, when you have a play like that, does anger at yourself fuel you, or do you have a compartment for it, or is it a little bit of both? How does that work in your head?
I mean, I move on to the next play. I mean, it's this league. You're gonna go through adversity. I mean, we've been blessed enough that I haven't had to deal with a lot of that early in my career. But I mean, I've had a lot of interceptions this year. It's not a secret. I mean, you kind of have to just move on. You have to just kind of keep playing. Because at the end of the day, if the interceptions, I mean, they're on the stat sheet, but if you're getting wins, no one really cares about them. So you have to find a way to win games no matter what it takes.
Last one. Patrick, I know Darrell Woods has played some over the years, but did you learn anything about him today as kind of a regular featured guy?
I mean, I think it's just what I've always known about him is he's going to battle. He's going to run for those tough yards. And if he gets a crease, he can make some plays happen. I think you've seen that in big moments of his entire career. And today was a big moment for him to step into that kind of that number one role, and I thought he did a great job doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes out of the Washington post-game press conference. And Steve, we hear from Mahomes, and what's funny is he just never makes a mistake like he did at the end of the second quarter, and that kind of went into this whole rock bottom angle as well. And it's kind of a funny moment there where he's saying, you know what, that was bad. And I think everyone knew it was bad. He's already mentioning Come On Man to make sure that and solidify that it's definitely 1,000,000% going to be on Come On Man ahead of ESPN's Monday Night Football tomorrow. But I think there are because you win, you could laugh a little bit at a moment like that. But had it gone the other way and the Chiefs lost, that would have been, a low point maybe of his career, dropping to 2-4. But it ends up being sort of what sprung the Chiefs to get into the locker room, to feel better about the way that they were playing both offensively and defensively in the second half. And I think in that presser, in a sense, it was just a general like sigh of relief. Like I think fans can really take away, like, they feel like they may be back, and that's going to be huge.
If you go back and listen to Mahomes' post-game press conference, which you can find on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network if you aren't subscribed to it already, there's a very different tone in his voice this week compared to last week. And that makes sense, right? Coming off of a brutal loss against the Buffalo Bills to a game where, you basically dominated the entire second half. You knew you were better than this football team, but you picked up a much needed win. And you can joke around about yourself a little bit when you lose that, like, yeah, that was just awful. I don't have any other way of explaining it than it was just a really bad decision that I decided to make during the game. And then him trying to explain the improvising of that throw that wound up getting called back because of a penalty. Like, that's why we love Patrick Mahomes, because those plays just don't happen for other people. So it's nice to get back in the win column. It's nice to see Mahomes in better spirits, and hopefully that means that this thing is going to turn around a little bit, and we're going to see them bounce back and rattle off a couple more wins here in the next couple of weeks.
So you heard from Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. If you stick with us on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network, you'll get to also hear from Darrell Williams and from Tyrann Mathieu after we shut this thing down. But before we do, Steve, and get to those press conferences, what are your final thoughts here on the game?
The defense, while they still have things to figure out, I wholeheartedly believe that we were absolutely right in wanting Juan Thornhill to be the starting safety over Dan Sorensen headed into this game, and really since the start of the season. Thornhill wasn't perfect,
no,
but he just supplies a level of athleticism that Dan Sorensen just simply doesn't have at this point in his career.
I'll let you continue, Steve. But like, Sorensen in a reserve role is fine, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? In that dime role and playing to his strengths for a handful of plays. It just was the starting snaps that was a killer with Sorensen. And now we can actually go back to like liking Sorensen again. It wasn't his fault that he was on the field too much.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, he's made some big plays in his career. It's just that he couldn't start anymore.
Yeah. And I've been talking to people about it all week long, is that he has been an impact player for the Kansas City Chiefs at times, but yeah, it was when he wasn't playing 100% of the snaps. It was when he was a reserve guy who could come in and, do a safety blitz and get a sack, or, force a tip pass or whatever that turned into an interception. That's where Dan Sorensen excels. He can make impact plays like that occasionally. He's just not a guy you need on the field all of the time. And it was really nice to see the Chiefs get some kind of pass rush up front, even without Chris Jones. So hopefully that means that these reps that these younger guys are getting without Chris Jones in the lineup are making an impact, and those guys are going to continue to contribute moving forward. And we'll actually see that manifest itself once Chris Jones is back and healthy and can be that, defensive front runner, depoy type of player that we want him to be, because he's probably out of the running for that this season, Pete. but we still know
Okay.
that he's their best defensive player.
I did not predict that he was going to be playing through a wrist injury and then not playing for 2 weeks. How are you going to get the sack record, Chris, if you're not on the field? What are you doing? You're ruining my bold prediction. No, but I think it is an interesting point, too, where because Mike Dana's played so well, and we're cautious here, but Frank Clark is playing a little bit better. You wonder how the Chiefs play Chris Jones, because you get him back in the lineup. Maybe you do backtrack a little bit on the edge stuff, and as you're getting Kando healthy as well, maybe you do play him more inside as Dana shows off on the outside, and maybe that's your best defensive lineup there. Jaron Reid obviously continues to need to play better. I think the Chiefs had nice contributions again out of Turk Wharton with the play. Just an overall, I think, sigh of relief. I think that's where I sort of end here in my thoughts about the Chiefs game with the Washington football team. It was dire. I think that's been the theme of the podcast. It was dire. It really felt like the Chiefs were not a playoff team about 2 hours ago when we were discussing this game at halftime. And then you finally got the old Chiefs. And it's been a while since you really felt like, this is the team that is Kansas City, makes them proud. And this is the team that we root for and has the swagger and the best quarterback in the world, playing like the best quarterback in the world. And so that's my takeaway right now. It gives you something to feel better about headed into the next game. Now, 2 weeks from now, you have another NFC East team, a stinker on Monday Night Football in the New York Giants, but you get probably a good test of an up-and-coming, I think, Titans team that is trying to stay relevant in the AFC next week, and they're on the Sunday Night Football game. So as we're recording this, we're going to see how they do against the Buffalo Bills, but they're capable of, I think, being in a game with the Bills. I tend to think the Bills will win this game. But that's a formidable challenge where, okay, we beat up and we recovered and did not get embarrassed by a bad team. This is a solid AFC team. Just like the teams that beat them in the AFC prior in the season, this is a team that's going to really, really want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They have not had a ton of success against Kansas City. It goes back to that AFC title game, too, in 2019. And I think now you feel better about yourselves. Let's see how you do against a more formidable opponent in what will be the Tennessee Titans next week.
And that Titans defense is just as bad as the Chiefs defense. So hopefully we'll see some points in that game.
Yeah, big fantasy guy, Steve, of course, remains loyal to his fantasy football. If you like the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network and you're listening on it, please leave us a rating and a review. Coming up on Monday, we have the Arrowhead Drive. We have the Out of Structure Podcast. Submit your questions on Twitter for both Ron Kopp and Matt Stagner. I'll make sure that they check the Twitter box this next time. And continue listening to the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. If you are on the podcast network, we're going to take a quick break. And again, you'll hear from Daryl Williams and Tyron Matthew. If you're joining us in the live stream, that's it for me today. Thank you to Stephen Serda. My name is Pete Sweeney. This has been another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Recap Show. The Chiefs right the ship in Washington, 31-13.